start with violence against women. Then we're going to move to talking about trafficking, in particular as it impacts women. And then lastly, we're going to talk about women in conflict. Okay, so these are three issues that really impact men and women, but since we're in Women's History Month, we're going to focus on the female side of gender. And remember, every day is International Women's Day, as far as I'm concerned. So what we'd like to do is start off with the topic that maybe is the most general, is the most broad, and impacts the most people, and that's violence against women. So if I could ask my colleagues to please pull up just a few slides to get us started here. Okay, so I'll be with you for the first 10 minutes or so talking about the broad topic of violence against women. So this is Jimmy Carter. He was US president from 1977 to 1981. He was our 39th president of the US. And what he has said in the past about violence against women is that the abuse of women and girls is the most pervasive and unaddressed human rights violation on earth. And personally, I couldn't agree with this statement more. I think he's absolutely correct. Both a couple different aspects of this statement is that it's pervasive and that it's very unaddressed. I think that violence against women is something that happens a lot, and I think it's something that we typically don't feel comfortable talking about. It does not respect any particular country, any ethnicity, any religion. It really impacts everybody everywhere in the world. So I 100% agree with this quote from Jimmy Carter. One of my main messages for you today, if you only remember one thing from what I say, is that violence against women, if you have experienced it yourself, or if you have a family member or a friend who has experienced it, you are not alone. That's the number one message I want everybody to remember. Almost everyone I know has had some kind of experience with this. For example, I grew up in a household where this was happening. Okay, so it doesn't respect boundaries. It happens everywhere. Next slide. So the UN estimates, particularly the World Health Organization, estimates that about 35% of women worldwide will experience either sexual or physical violence throughout their lifetime. So if you think about this figure for a second and think about the Philippines in particular, there's about roughly 100 million people in the Philippines. Let's estimate half of those people are women. So 50 million women in the Philippines. 35% would be 17.5 million women. So if you look at the math, you're talking about a huge number of people who may be experiencing this right now. So just try to wrap your minds around that and you'll understand why we're addressing this topic first of the three difficult issues we're going to tackle today. Next slide. Okay, so the second part of Jimmy Carter's statement, that it's unaddressed. Why do you think that we don't talk about violence against women very much, particularly in some cultures? Okay, I would point to the first sentence here. Women and girls are most at risk of violence from men that they know, particularly men in their own families. This makes it very, very difficult for many people to talk about violence that's occurring to them or to their family member or to their friend because it's their own family member who is the perpetrator. Okay, we don't want to hurt the people in our family. We don't want them to be arrested. We don't want to damage our relationship with them. We don't want them to be embarrassed in public. We just want the abuse to stop. So this is one reason why it's really difficult for people to be able to talk about this subject. Another thing that possibly could inhibit women in particular from being comfortable of talking about the subject is because sometimes we may feel like maybe we did something wrong. No, oh, I just made him mad. Oh, I burned dinner. Oh, I ruined his shirt when I did the laundry. You know, he just had a bad day at work. So there are a lot of excuses that we tend to make for the people in our family because we love them and we want their behavior to change, but we don't really necessarily know how to do that. So think about that. It's a difficult topic, but I think it's one that it's worth spending a little bit of time thinking about the people that you know and love, thinking about your friends, and being willing to support them. Remember, today is all about empowerment. So think about the people in your lives and how you can be there for them if you know somebody who is experiencing this. My second main message for today, if you remember anything, is that there is never any excuse for violence. So even if the person in your family had a bad day, if they were fired from their job, if you did something wrong or you feel you did something wrong, violence is never an appropriate response, no matter the circumstance. Okay, so that's message number 2. All right, so since we're talking about empowerment, we don't want to end on a sour note. We want to know what can we do about it, right? So one of the first things that we can do is understand we're not alone, and then we can educate ourselves and educate the people around us so that we know and understand what solutions are available to us. So here in the Philippines, the legal parameters of what we can do about violence against women is in Republic Act 9262, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004. So this law basically defines how does the government of the Philippines define violence against women. It's physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, and financial violence. Okay, those second two maybe aren't clear. You might have to reference the law to see exactly what that means. Okay, so I've given you a couple of the pieces of the law here, but also the website if you want to go and check it out for yourself. So remember, education here is key so that everybody understands what the options are. What the law also does is it lays out the options for orders of protection. So if a woman chooses to leave her abuser, she may need to be able to get an order of protection so that person cannot come after her. Okay, there are legal ways to do that. And if you go to the law, you can find out there's more than one type of order of protection in the Philippines, and this lays out the steps for how to get those. Okay. One thing I'll add is that on average, it takes a woman 7 tries to leave her abuser. Okay, so if you know somebody in this situation and maybe you're frustrated with them because they refuse to end the relationship or to get out of the house or to protect him or herself from what's going on, and abuse does happen to men too, by the way, remember it takes an average of 7 tries. Why does it take 7 tries? Because you love the abuser. Okay, and it's very difficult to arrive at the decision that you're actually going to leave. Okay? And if you want to be a supportive friend or family member to someone who's in this situation, never pressure them. They already feel out of control enough. Just let them know the decision is theirs. If they do ever choose to leave, you will be there for them. And you'll help them. You'll help them understand the law. You'll help them get an order of protection if you need it. And you'll help them to access resources. Okay? But never pressure them to leave. It should always be their decision. So I mentioned resources. Okay, a lot of us are not lucky enough to have a big extended family or a big network of friends who can protect us if leaving an abusive situation. So you might have to turn to the government or to non-government organizations, to NGOs, to receive services. Okay, if that's the case, here in Manila, there's a couple of options. So you can go to DSWD if you're in need or you know someone in need of crisis services, and here are a couple phone numbers here. If someone chooses to pursue a legal case against their abuser, they actually want to press charges, then here is the phone number for the National Bureau of Investigation's Violence Against Women and Children's desk. Okay, and actually that latter one is available to anyone. It's not just in Manila. Okay, next slide, please. All right, for anyone who's not in Manila, and I'm addressing our friends in CDO right now, This is a website where they can go to get phone numbers to various different crisis hotlines throughout the country. And this link also has information on how to get a barangay order of protection. Okay, so for the folks who are not in Manila but they still need government help, this is a good place to start, is to go to this website. Okay, and last slide. Second to last slide, we're almost there. Okay, these are a few of the non-government organizations that are providing services for victims of abuse. I would actually add here that when we think about that 17.5 million figure that I mentioned earlier, there's actually not a lot of NGOs providing services right now. I think that for those of you maybe who are thinking about your future and you want to do something that's helping people, this is a sector that could really stand to grow in the Philippines, in my opinion, because there's just not a lot of organizations doing this kind of work right now. So I think it's something that's really needed, and maybe some of you might want to think about that for later on. Okay, so those are a few of the NGOs. And as promised, last slide. So I wanted to leave it actually on a slightly more positive note since this is a difficult topic. Okay, so most of you probably know about Malala. So she was shot by the Taliban when she was attending school in Pakistan. They didn't like the idea of women being educated, especially young girls. So I love this quote from Malala, and I think it's perfect for our theme of women's empowerment for today. I raise up my voice not to shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot succeed when half of us are held back. Okay, this is why I always joke around that March isn't the only Women's Month or Women's History Month. We're half the population. You know, sometimes more than half the population if you're talking about the US. I think we're like up to 52% now. We're taking over. Okay, so I just want everybody to remember the theme of today is empowerment. It's about sharing. It's about supporting those around you. I think that women are good at this, actually. I think that women are good at reaching out and mentoring other ladies, maybe because we're not as competitive sometimes as men. So be a good friend, help those around you, and have a good afternoon. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so I'm dual-hatted as your moderator for today. So that was my piece, but I think now we're moving on to our second topic. I think, Camille, you're up. Yeah, we're going to address the women's issue, the context of trafficking and how it impacts women. Okay, so Camille.
Good afternoon to my brothers and sisters whose friends who are from Mindanao. Assalamualaikum and mahayong hapon. Again, Yoro, mahayong hapon. Assalamualaikum. Okay. Okay. So wait. Hello.
Wait.
Here.
Hello, Neil. Good afternoon.
Mahayong hapon.
Mahayong hapon. And by the way, congratulations, Neil. Your best award as local employee from the embassy.
Thank you. Okay, so now I proceed to discuss about human trafficking, otherwise known as the modern-day slavery. Although my topics is all about Mindanao, but I think I have to go back to the. I know how to operate this one. I can just. Okay. So while my topic is about human trafficking in Mindanao, I would like to go back to the larger picture, so we can compare and find out what happens after. So when you talk about human trafficking in general, we go back to what we call as the Palermo Protocol, which is the UN agreement that was signed by more than 100 countries. And the purpose of the law was to prevent and suppress human trafficking. And it was 2000. Since then, today, there are still 5 countries in the world that have not criminalized human trafficking. So my first slide is, that's depressing technology. Sometimes not working, Teresa. So if you look at the picture here, this is one of the photos taken in Singapore, Filipinos and Indonesian maids. That's human trafficking. Next slide, please. Now, we go back to the definition of human trafficking under the Palermo Protocol, and it says about the following elements. 1, 2, 3, 4. The most important is that the purpose of that is exploitation. Okay. Continue. Now, since 2000 when the protocol was signed and with the parties, we observed that today, or just 2014 when the survey was conducted, we have 35.8 million victims across the globe. This number is more than the population, total population of Mindanao, which is like almost 13 million. Okay, so Mindanao population plus 1/4 the population of Visayas. So that's the total number of victims globally. Next. Okay, so under the Human Trafficking Act, the protocol on the Palermo Protocol, there are common features of exploitation. And these are the following. It seems like sexual exploitation is prevalent among women. So you have forced labor, organ removal, and others, followed by sexual exploitation with the forced labor, which is about 40%. The rest would be organ removal and others. Next slide, please. If we go by age and gender, it seems like, okay, women and girls constitute 70%. The rest, boys and men, 30. Next. In terms of gender breakdown, the forced labor, and we have this one, more men. And according to the International Labor Organization, forced labor in the private economy amounts to $150 billion of illicit profit each year. Next. Okay, breakdown of sexual exploitation. This one is very shocking. Almost all women and girls are victims of human trafficking in sexual exploitation. Next. And then of the 35.8 million victims globally, 61% of the victims are found in 5 countries, namely, next. And then these are countries that perform dismally in terms of protecting human rights. 1, Mauritania, next. The top 10 countries with the highest number of human trafficking cases. What's the common denominator among these countries? All of them, yes, Central Asia, Middle East, and then Syria, for example, Sudan. All of them continue to experience civil strife or civil conflict or war. Okay. All of them. Let's go now to the Philippines. 2000 was the passage of the approval of the Palermo Protocol. Our countries who signed the agreement were supposed to be encouraged to create its own national legislation. And our national legislation on trafficking and extortion was signed in 2003, 3 years after. And this was amended in 2012. But even with that law signed by Philippine Congress, there are still like 800,000 Filipinos being trafficked out of the country every year. Next, according to the US State Department in 2015, Philippines is in tier 2. What does it mean? Tier 1 is the highest. It means that we had not complied fully the standards of the law set by the United States. But we are making significant efforts to comply the same. Maybe next year. Next, okay, as of December 2015, these were the persons convicted of our RA 9208 as amended by 10364. But this is very tricky. Why? Convicted here, it doesn't mean final conviction. Because under our system, it could be on appeal to the Supreme Court. There are two things that happen in a case. When you were convicted in the RTC, it could be appealed in the Supreme Court all the way. When Supreme Court decides final conviction, or you don't appeal to the appellate court and will say, I would accept the results of the decision. Now, if you ask me how many cases that really became final, maybe less than 60%. I know only of 2 cases that became final as it went to the Supreme Court. The rest are still in limbo, meaning are still on trial in the RTC. Some of them are on appeal in the Court of Appeals, some of them on the Supreme Court. So don't really agree that when you say conviction, final, still on appeal. The only cases that were finally affirmed in the Supreme Court were 2 cases only. That was in 2011 and in 2013. Next. Okay, when you say Mindanao, what comes to your mind, Mindanao? Muslims, kidnapping. Okay. People remember, I have only 3 minutes. The direction of this country is largely defined by the movements in Mindanao. From kidnapping, lawless elements, to Abu Sayyaf, to Khalifa Islamiyah movement, to Bangsamoro Justice movement. What else? These are things, indicators that define the direction of our country. So we jump into Mindanao about human trafficking. PIP in Mindanao. Next. So again, very tricky. From 2005 to 2015, 11% convictions. Right now, 200 plus. So 200 plus, 11% of that's around 60, 20, I don't know. Okay? So, and the most number of cases came from Mindanao in Zamboanga City. Why Zamboanga City? It used to be that human trafficking was concentrated in Manila, especially in Olongapo, especially in Manila, all these things. But now, the human traffickers are going into Mindanao. Why? It's a porous border facing Indonesia, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. For example, the first case of conviction was very monumental, historical. It came from Zamboanga City. The case of people, which was Jalali in 2011. That was the first final conviction that was affirmed by the Supreme Court. And they were, not all of them were from Mindanao. Half of that came from Manila. They went to Zamboanga, and then they went from Zamboanga, they traveled all the way to Sindacan, Sindacan to Kota Kinabalu. And it will take you like 22 hours by boat from Zamboanga City all the way to Sindacan in Malaysia. So because of the lack of database and information, even the database of the IACAT, this is the government agency that takes care of the human trafficking cases, they have limited information. We can only derive from the anecdotal evidence and from the information coming from media. So we say that, for example, 2015, this is the one, 2015, July, these are the things that happened at that time. Next. Now, one reason why TIP is growing and accelerating because of these misconceptions. Number one, it is not a domestic problem. You say, it's happening all over. And in trafficking, you don't have to travel to be a victim of TIP. You don't have to travel from the Philippines to Malaysia before you be considered as a TIP victim. You can be transported from just within Manila, Luzon, Visayas, or within Luzon, within Visayas. Okay? Next. Victim is not a criminal. She is a victim. Third, cultural. This is prevalent. If you look at the data, for example, the countries, it is mostly happening in Islamic countries where there is a strong Sharia law application. It's accepted. Next, they say she's free to go. But again, your freedom is compromised because you're being held hostage by your employer. Next. What is the challenge to everyone? I'll go back to the statement of President Barack Obama that human trafficking is a concern to every person, every community, every business, and every nation. Next. I will conclude by saying we have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. So that was broad topic number 2. And for broad topic number 3, I'd like to introduce Ms. Sue, who will talk to us for a few minutes about women in conflict.
Afternoon, everyone. Okay pa kayo? Nobody's sleeping? I can see I have a sister here. Are you the only one from Mindanao? Assalamualaikum. Is there anybody from Mindanao? Muslims or? Yeah, Assalamualaikum, brothers. So, may hapon, Cagayan, can you hear me? I also know how to speak Visayan because I studied in Cebu for a long time. Basta, eto ba? Can you just do that? So which one should I press? Okay. So I'm Sue Candao. I'm from the Senate of the Philippines, and thank you, US Embassy, Thomas Jefferson, Cultural Affairs, for having me today. My topic is on conflict, women in conflict, but let me contextualize it first by showing you what these conflicts are. And historically speaking, ano bang pinagdaanan ng Pilipinas? What have we gone through So these are just highlights. Of course, there's so many conflicts here and there, even happening right now. But this one, I just want us to remember some of our historical facts. So in 1521, 1565, of course, the Mangsamoro already started fighting, not only the Moros, but of course, people from Luzon. And you know that from history. And again, during the Japanese occupation, we also fought, and our ancestors were able to drive out the Japanese from the Moro land. And during the pacification of the Americans in 1899 to 1913, specifically in 1903, when most the American soldiers came to the Philippines, and then they started, the first governor that was assigned in the Moro land was Governor Leonard Wood. He was very punitive, he was harsh, and he was merciless. So at one point in time, when the Bangsamoro were fed up, they went to Buddaho. This is a mountain, a volcanic mountain in Holo, where they prepared for the attack of the American soldiers. And what happened was about 600 people, Moro people died, because of course their weapons were not as advanced as those of the American soldiers. And then again, under another leadership, in the Battle of Budbagsak in 1913, 500 more warriors were killed, with 50 women and children also died. And then fast forward to Jabida massacre. I don't know if any of you has gone through history and read about this, when some young people like you were recruited, but and then some of the stories would tell us that they were all killed, but there was one witness to all of this, because he was able to jump off the, where was this, in Corregidor Island, the island of Corregidor, and he was saved by some of the fishermen, and the governor in that area in Cavite informed then Ninoy. He was a senator then, Ninoy Aquino, and he was the one who exposed this through a privileged speech in Congress at that time. And he was very much against Marcos, so that's what happened. 1968 was already the Marcos era. And of course, the martial law was catalytic. And in 1974, the armed forces was fielded in Mindanao to fight the Bangsamoro guerrillas. And as an after effect of this, an estimated 200,000 evacuees sought refuge in Sabah, Malaysia. 150,000, 200,000 lives lost, and about Muslim civilians displaced from their homes. And we also had the Ilaga, or the Ilonggo Land Grabbers Association. Nobody from Iloilo here? So in 1970s and 1971, Ilaga launched a series of attacks or massacres. In fact, it was listed down in this one. This is a little bit blurry, but this was by Salah Jubair. He listed this down, and Salah Jubair is more well known to you as Muhager Iqbal of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. So the details of some of the massacres are these ones, but I don't want to elaborate on them. So I hope that the embassy can give you a copy of my presentation so you can just read this. This one in Malisbong, though, a lot of women, when the men were already, about over 1,000 of them were brought to the Takbil Mosque, and they were fired upon and they died. A lot of the women were brought back to the naval ship of the Philippine Armed Forces. And of course, in our culture, nobody would want to say that she got raped or, some violence were done to her. But my brother-in-law, who was a teenager at that time, would tell me that after a year from that massacre, many women gave birth with no known fathers. So, and then after the birth of the revolutionary movement, first was the black shirts, This is a ragtag armed group that came into being because they were already tired of what was happening. They wanted to even out the playing field. So in 1969, the Moro National Liberation Front, chaired by Professor Nur Miswari, also came into being. And in 1984, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, which is more known to you now as the MILF, also came into being, chaired by Hashim Salamat. Of course, Hashim Salamat was already part of the MNLF, but maybe because of certain visions, then he wanted to establish his own. And then Strada's all-out war. He wanted to pulverize Camp Abu Bakar in Maguindanao because he thought that this is the stronghold of the MILF. And so therefore he wanted to annihilate all of them. And he was very hawkish. He didn't want to pursue the peace that was pursued by his predecessors like President Ramos. And this is the Maimbong massacre in February 4 of 2008. This massacre happened at 2 o'clock in the morning at dawn. You know, when there were gunshots that were heard by some of the residents, and after, when it died a little bit, they rode a bangka because their houses were on stilts. You know, yung nasa tubig, their houses were on stilts, and then they wanted to go to the mangrove to hide from the soldiers. But the soldiers were already there, so they were so scared, and the soldiers were firing at them. And one of the lady that died was a pregnant woman, and 2 children, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old survived because the 19-year-old who also died was able to cover the body of the 2-year-old child. This is still a case that is being pursued by the Commission on Human Rights. And then in 2008, the ILAGA, or the Ilonggo Land Grabbers Association, has resurfaced because of the new campaigns by Muslim rebels. And the new name that they have is the Armed Christian Group Reformed ILAGA Movement. So this photo was taken in 2008 in North Cotabato. So if you remember the Maguindanao massacre, or the most commonly known as the Ampatuan massacre, where 58 persons killed and 32 of them members of the media. And a lot of them were women because it was the wife of Governor Mangudadata who wanted to go and file his candidacy with the siblings of Mangudadata, the sisters and their supporters. And the Zamboanga siege, you also remember this, where thousands of people are displaced, and some of them are still in the evacuation centers. And the Mama Sapano Batch operation, or what they also call the Mama Sapano massacre. But of course, what you would know are only the 44 staff members that died in that incident. But there were also 18 rebels and 8 civilians that died. And one of them is a 5-year-old child named Sarah Panangulon, with her parents, Tots and Samra, who were wounded. So the child died, but the parents were wounded. So what are the other causes of conflict? Rido. My friends here from Mindanao would know about this. This is an interclan wars usually arise in defense of maratabat, or honor, family honor. So if a man does something bad to a woman, especially to a lady, and the family of the lady would know about what happened, then Rido would soon follow suit. Yeah. And usually families would die, members of families, and then it becomes bigger and bigger. The relatives of the families, other relatives of the families, sometimes for as long as you have the same family name, then you become part of the Rido. And in recent times, this is caused by rivalry for power and political supremacy. So in the rise of the warlord clans, you remember the Ampatuan massacre. The patriarch of that clan was Andan Ampatuan Sr. And he was the leader of that particular clan, which caused also a lot of troubles in Maguindanao. So what are the roles of women during conflict? The active role is as combatants. So we have women as combatants who are also soldiers. But they also perform non-combat roles as medics, couriers, mobilizers, or sometimes informant of the rep groups or perhaps other groups, etc. And of course, a lot of us are unwilling participants. You know, when you are the one who takes care of the evacuation center, you are the one who takes care of resources there, taking care of food, etc. And what is the direct impact of conflict on women? Socioeconomic, large-scale displacement of families. Even up to this moment, we still have displaced children and families. Women and children are left in evacuation camps while the men are in fighting, hiding, or perhaps imprisoned or dead. And women become heads of the families and they carry the brunt of livelihood for their families and siblings. In fact, a lot of our women sisters are now OFWs abroad because they have to, man up and take care of the family. For health and security, of course, we have psychological trauma. This is not exclusive to the women in conflict in Mindanao. This is everywhere, every conflict. Exposure to harsh elements, being prone to more abuses, lack of proper sustenance and medicines, poor and unhygienic facilities. Just like what Sir Neil said a while ago, a lot of our women, especially in Zamboanga, also become, I've also read that they are now trading flesh just to get by. Or maybe it's not really their choice, but they are forced by circumstance or by maybe people also. And of course, education, the disruption of education and illiteracy. The children move from one place to another and they do not finish their school. Especially during the Mapa Sapano incident, in fact, they were not able to graduate in March because it happened in January. So maybe sometime after they were able to graduate. But illiteracy for me is really dangerous because if you look back at the Ampatuan clan, the patriarch, he only finished grade 3. So when you are an illiterate person, sometimes the rules of law are just an option. So another option is the rule of the jungle, so to speak. And consequential effect of conflict of Bangsamoro women. This is quite positive because women take on a leadership role from a supportive role in a family and community. And they become less traditional and more public because in the Muslim culture, the women are not really public. We are very private. Yes, and because of the sensitivities of the families. And they actively involve themselves in survival mechanisms and strategies, and they are now leaders or pioneers in NGOs advocating livelihood and peace building activities. But even with this positive consequences, do we really want conflict to be there? So what is the solution to all these conflict and wars? These are the questions that I want to give to you. And how will this end and when? Because it has been hundreds and hundreds of years that we've been in this conflict. I want to share with you what Samuel Tan said. I'll just read the last sentence. And this is what he said. This is the time to tell the truth, to make us free indeed. It is not enough to know adequately the Mindanao conflict. It is necessary to understand it. You have to contextualize. You have to start from the beginning. You have to read everything before you can really understand what the Mindanao people are going through. And of course, I believe it is our common objective to attain peace, and the first step towards it is to understand. Because I think the greatest sin is to be ignorant, I think that is the divisive of all is ignorance because we don't understand, that's why we don't care and we just don't bother. And sometimes we become irrelevant. We become less caring, less loving people. And our objective really is to have peace, not only in Mindanao, but of course in the Philippines and it may sound Miss Universe, but of course, we want peace all over the world. Good afternoon. Alaikum salam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. That was excellent. And I do think it will be a good idea for those of you where we have your email addresses. We'll send out the PowerPoint presentation so that you can refer back to some of the great statistics and historical information that you've seen here today. So I promised this would be interactive and that I wouldn't let you fall asleep. So this is the part where everybody's got to wake up, because this is your time now. What we'd like to do is to take any questions or any comments, any opinions that you would like to share about any of these three topics that we've just covered. We don't want to forget about our friends who are down in CDO. I hope you can still see and hear us, because we will be turning this opportunity over to you first. If anyone in CDO has any questions or any comments about what we just discussed, feel free to jump in.
Group one and group two, please prepare your questions based on the presentation that has been discussed. So, at least 3 questions. One for group one, group two, another one, and the last question will be from the department chair in management. Yes. Okay, question might be from Debbie. Debbie? Okay, come here. Question. Okay, those who have questions in mind now can share it with the embassy. Anything that comes to your mind that is focused on women empowerment, women trafficking. You have questions based on those presentations? Yes, wow, brave soul. Hello, we have Brave Soul here to question you about the presentation of this presentation. Me, Teresa.
Larissa.
She's a student leader from public school teacher. Her name is, say it. Okay, Nisreen.
What assessment to our young age to keep us from violence?
Say it loud.
What assessment to our young age to keep out from violence?
Some advice to keep out of violence.
Okay, so technical difficulties. What is my advice, or anyone's advice, everyone can jump in here, for young people who want to get away from violence? That's an excellent question, and I think there is no one answer that would work for everyone. Just today, we talked about 3 different types of violence. So mine was basically on family-related violence. Okay, then we talked about people who experience trafficking, which is another type of violence, and then the type of violence that we encounter with conflict. All right, so starting with the biggest, it's like a funnel, right? Family-related violence probably impacts the most people in this country, then trafficking, then possibly conflict, okay, because that's very dependent on your location. I think that if you're talking about my presentation in particular, family-related violence, I think for young people, very young people, maybe who are still in school, you need to find a trusted adult that you can talk to about what's happening in your family. Okay, this could be someone at your school. It could be someone who's friends with your family, but you need to find an adult that you can trust. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that, again, realize that you're not alone and you don't have to suffer in silence. Violence is never justified. A parent against a child, a husband against a wife against a husband, brothers, sisters, boyfriends, girlfriends. There is never any excuse to raise your hand to another person. Okay, ladies, this goes for you too. My husband is a really big guy. He always says you can't hurt steel. So if I, punch him a little bit, he says it never hurts. Okay, but playing around is one thing. Actually raising your hand to somebody in anger and in violence is another. So for young people, please reach out, find an adult you can trust, and let them know what's happening, and then that adult can help you from there. Okay? So thank you very much. CDO, do you have any other questions for us?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nesreen. Nesreen is from City Central School Supreme Pupil Government Organization. Any more questions from Xavier? Go, Xavier. Okay, we have here from Aya student.
International
Your
studies.
name.
So hello, good afternoon. My name is Jafel, and I would just like to ask this question. Looking into women in Mindanao, how would we be able to empower them if they are culturally regarded as inferior to men? Like, for example, it's part of their culture already that they already accept that as part of their culture, that they would only do household work, or they are only tasked to do little things instead of being expected to do other bigger or greater work in the community.
Yeah. How do you empower women, especially in Mindanao, when culturally they are considered as inferior? Then?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think the very basic that we should arm the Mindanao women with is education. Because if they know their rights, if they have more options, when you are educated, you get to have more options. You're exposed to a larger society, then you are not shackled by your own culture, but you also grow as a person, as a member of a bigger community. So I think that's number one, education. And the rest of that is bravery. It's just like me, you cannot, you have to have an attitude that, fight something that tries to fight women and make women inferior. So we have to make your voice. That's
Be part of a bigger community now, so that you will be heard.
The answer of our colleague here, I would say if you look at the perceptions about DIP, cultural. One of the reasons why human trafficking is spiking in some of the countries, especially in the Middle East, because this idea that because part of our culture. True that we need to empower people, we need to educate people, but again, we go beyond educating the young, because most of my personal experience that the problem lies with the adults who are actually the leaders and will say that our culture really is the most important thing in our lives. So the education will be given not only to the young people but to the adults as well. It's very tough because it's difficult to change an adult person. But again, you want to change the perceptions of people, you have to empower them, educate them, not only the young people but also the adults. Okay. But I would like to raise an objection that there is no such thing as inferior culture in Mindanao. There's no such thing. So the idea that how we change the inferiority of the culture of Mindanao, I think there's a misconception. Culture, I would say, is equal, and that is a matter of perception that one is inferior over the other. But as a Mindanaoan, I would say that my culture is as far equal as the culture of others in this country.
Okay, very good. So I think maybe now only have a few minutes left. I really see comments here with our audience, our live studio audience here in Manila. So, did we collect anything on paper or?
Do you have questions?
There's one question from here.
go here
Okay.
first?
Ladies first.
Ladies. It's Women's History Month. Ladies go first.
Let's go first.
You can use the microphone.
Yes, sir. The question is directed to you.
Oh,
Oh, yes,
okay.
sir. Oh, you said earlier that there is a high level of trafficking in a persons in Muslim countries because of the imposition of Sharia law. Well, I would just like to comment that I think the persons that you are talking in particular are the overseas workers. And I think it is not just solely the imposition of the Sharia law that makes them vulnerable to be trafficked, but the kafala sponsorship system. And I think I believe that it is just the countries, Lebanon and Qatar, which has not reformed their kafala sponsorship system. What are the efforts that the Philippine government is doing to reform that system that makes overseas Filipino workers vulnerable to be trafficked? Thank you.
Okay, two things. Sharia law, if you look at the countries in Yemen, Lebanon, Sudan, Democratic Republic of the other one, there is the most, especially Sudan and Yemen. Talk about South North Sudan, same thing. There is the strong Sharia application that says that, for example, in the studies that was conducted by the 2015, that the Sharia law allows the elders, the culture, to engage the younger, the girls and the boys to work in the farmland, in the rice field, and especially the women, the girls, because the girls are singled out as they are destined only for human labor, and they don't have any capacity to go beyond that to be leaders in the society. And I think even if you look at all the Middle Eastern countries, the strong Sharia law application would tell us that culturally, women are inferior, and it's a given fact. Now, you asked me about Kapalya in the Philippine context. I don't know exactly about the Kapalya system. What I understand is that the human trafficking has a lot of dimensions, especially in a Philippine context. I'm talking about the back door. So there is illegal exportation of our workers to the Middle East through the Sandakan, Malaysia, by these traffickers. That I know is that that is pure illegal, and there's no kind of system. The only problem why there's a spiking incidence of human trafficking through that one, because there's a porous border, there's a weak law enforcement, and that the government is, I would say, totally partly responsible for not policing it, because in the first place, Mindanao is, especially in Sulu, in Zamboanga, as really Anuma Sandi was call it. In terms of the legal, we know that by law, when a person goes to the other country as OFW, he must be under a registered travel recruitment agency. The problem is that the person who goes abroad doesn't want to go into the legal system, and instead would directly ask people from the other country to hire them, bring them into the other country without passing through the institutional mechanisms. So by the time they get into that one, the government has no way of knowing their whereabouts. I'll tell you, for example, 98% of our OFWs who go into the institutional system where there is a recruitment agency registered under the office of the OWA, most of them, when you have problems, they can be traced by our embassies abroad. But those who have not got into the system, 100% of them, I would say, end up defenseless without any support, because first, we cannot trace them because they have to be registered in our embassies once they go out, or the the recruitment agency, has to report to the OWA that these are the number of persons that will travel to other country. So there's a clear-cut answer here that if you want to be protected when you go to other country, as an OFW, go to a registered recruitment agency, meaning they have a recruitment agency number in the OWA. If you go to the back door, I tell you, I don't know what happens to you. And I cannot provide a clear-cut answer. Without OWAs, without government's internal procedure, institutional mechanisms? My answer to is, I don't know how to fix it, except that go to the system, legal system, not avail of this extra judicial process, extra out of system process just to get into their country because you are desperate to get money from. Okay, thank you. Ma'am?
May I just add something? A lot of people who are trafficked, especially women, they don't know that they are being trafficked. And sometimes the traffickers don't also know that they are trafficking. Because I have an experience lately. One of my nephews is in Qatar, and he was asking me, Auntie, do you know anybody of anyone who is with the immigration at the airport? And I said, why? Because they wanted to bring some teachers to Qatar, I think. And I said, so what's going to happen next? So you just have to, let them pass through immigration. And I said, you know what you're asking me to do? You're asking me to be part of a trafficking of these teachers. So I think, again, ignorance is such a culprit that we don't know that we are trafficked or we don't know that we are already trafficking.
I give an example about people which is Jalali, the Zamboanga case. The reason why the 6 persons were trafficked to Sandakan, Malaysia, because the trafficker was just like a private person and never of these persons. He was never a registered recruiter in the OWA. He just disappeared from nowhere and then presented himself as having the expertise and the power to bring people to Malaysia with this high-paying job. So they went to Malaysia without any papers. The passport was just given to him by sister, and then without any coordination with the office of the OWA, either in Malaysia or in the Philippines, people went there, only to find out they became prostitutes. And for 2 months, she served as prostitute, serving number of men in that video game bar somewhere in Kinabalu.
Okay, so I think we had one more question from over here. It was passed to me secretly on a piece of paper, but it's an excellent question, maybe from in the back. The question is, in our fight for women's empowerment, aren't we becoming violators of men? Aren't we somehow putting down men, depriving men of opportunities by empowering women? I love how everybody's looking at each other like, what? That doesn't sound right. So, I mean, it's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question, and we should address it. And my answer is, if you've ever heard the expression, it's not a zero-sum game, okay? If I win, you lose. And if you win, I lose. That's a zero-sum game, where there's one winner and there's one loser. That's not how this works, because we all live on this same planet together. And the more people that we have that are educated, and they're out in the workforce, they're out participating in society, they're becoming leaders, they're like Malala, they're using their voice to speak and to bring up those people who need a little bit of a helping hand, who need a little empowerment. That makes everybody's life better. Okay, there's a lot of inventions floating around in the world that are only here because women came up with them. Would a man have thought of it 10 years later? Maybe. Okay, my point is that it's not a zero-sum game. We all benefit. The more voices, the more bright ideas, the more participation that we have both in the economy and in society as a whole. You know, something that we talk about a lot here when it relates to women in conflict is how do we get more women involved in the peace process? How do we make sure that women are at the table? We have this project that we support called Women's Peace Tables. Okay, and it's not just about getting someone sitting at the table who's literally a woman. Okay, that's tokenism. You don't just need one person who's sitting there to check the box and say, hey, we have women's participation. That's not what that's all about. Okay, what you need are people at the table of both genders, of multiple backgrounds, so that you don't fall victim to what's called groupthink. Okay, if you have everybody sitting around the table and trying to think of a solution to a very difficult problem, and they're all from the same place, and they all have the same background, and they're all the same culture, and all the same religion, well, you're only going to get one kind of answer. Not very creative thinking. Okay, so you need people who are empowered sitting at that table, both women and men. You need Muslims and Christians. You need people who are from Mindanao and not from Mindanao. You need everybody at the table coming together so that you can get as many voices as you can. These things are complicated, okay? And more brains, 10 brains are better than one brain. Okay, so that's my answer to that question.
Okay, I'd like to have a rejoinder. This was also a question raised before when 9262 was enacted. Some men cried foul because it is practically, he said, it's a violation to the men's rights. Remember that the protection order we issued is one way, unilateral. You issue a barangay protection order, permanent protection order is one way. The moment it's issued, men will be excluded. If he's in the house, he'll be excluded from the house. So the question, would it violate the right of men and equal protection clause? And so I will try to answer this question legally, and I will say that as a human rights lawyer practicing before in Mindanao, this is how the court mentioned that physically there's actually an imbalance of physical capacity between men and women. So the reason why the protection order is issued unilaterally because men by nature are physically stronger than women. So even if you will say, allow the man to just reform himself, he will not do it. With his physical strength and power, a swift second, for example, he can change everything. He can turn upside down the house and even put the women into the dustbin of history. Sorry. So that kind of thing. So the idea is that you want to balance the physical strength of persons, you put law into it and push the physical strength of women at par with men. That is why the protection order primarily was unilateral because by nature, according to the decision of the court, there is this limited capacity physically of women to fight against men when push comes to shove. Thank you.
Well, again, I just want to go back to the inferiority of women in the Muslim culture. Actually, I think it's not really true because, well, they say that we're inferior because we are in a supportive role. But you know, our men are in the leadership role because they would really protect the women. They don't want the women exposed to abuses or whatnot in an environment or in a community. And in fact, if you look at the Sharia law, you will in the succession, wills and succession, I think the women would say, "Oh, this is not fair because the man or the brother would get more. Let's say 50%, and the sister would get less. Maybe if there are two sisters, 25%. Why? Because the man or the brother is supposed to take care of the sisters. The shares of the sisters are theirs, but the share of the brother is also theirs. So see, it's not really, if you look at it from a far point of view, you would think that probably, yes, really the women are, second-class citizens or that, but no, not really. They are very protected. They are very much protected by their families. But sometimes the protection is also too much that, the women cannot anymore spread their wings and grow.
We have time for maybe just one more, and then we'll move to the next exciting portion. Okay, please.
Hi, Miss, I have a question. According to you, women get like 25% and men get like 50. Your example, right?
This is just
Okay, that's just an example.
an example.
But then all my life, I'm a Muslim. I've heard my dad say, "Don't you gum in public because you're a girl. Don't spread your legs because you're a girl. Wear skirts that are until this long." And miss, in today's society, you can barely find skirts that are this long and make you look like your age. I look like a lola. And another question is, how do you plan on educating the people in Mindanao? I'm just saying Mindanao because there are a lot of Muslims there, right? When they say that, oh, it's written in the Quran that women cannot do this. Or example, miss, in Saudi, in my opinion, they are extremists. Women are not allowed to drive. Women are not allowed to be in politics. Women are not allowed to say anything. They're not allowed to travel without permission from their husbands. But then, I think if I'm not mistaken, Thailand or Malaysia, women can be in politics. Why is it like that?
I think really when you go back, a lot of things are no longer Islamic, but are cultural. You know, even the wearing of the hijab is cultural. I spoke with an imam from Iran. He's a scholar, and he was telling me, because I asked him, would I be committing a sin because I am not wearing a hijab? And he said that the Quran only asks for you to be modest. And sometimes modesty is relative. You know, when you go to a place who maybe you wear shorts, most of it, then that's what's modest, you know. So in the Philippines, um, but I'm very also very conservative. So, and it's really modesty not to expose your. I am sorry, I'm not prejudging anyone, but I think it's modesty when you don't expose yourselves, because in the Quran, I just want us to understand that the one who tempts has greater sin than the one who is tempted. So I think, and your father is correct, because he's just trying to protect you from any abuses, perhaps, or you know. But we don't have to be part of the majority of the society. I don't think you look like a Lola or what. Uh, Sometimes these are perceptions. These are not really maybe Islamic, but cultural in nature. Because when you look at the nuns, they cover their heads. Because, you know, the covering of the heads is not exclusive to the Muslims. This is a practice of the ancient times. You know, even the burqa, you know, when only the eyes are seen. This was a practice of years ago, because maybe of the sunstorm or other, you know, the harshness of the elements of nature. So that's what it is. But it's up to you to interpret it according to what you want. But you just have to be guided always by modesty. So what is modest to you? If what you think this is modest to you, then go ahead. You should not be shackled by anything that is cultural in nature.
Miss, one more question, sorry. Why do you say that it's the women that tempts the men when it's the men's decision if they're gonna rape the woman or not, if they're gonna touch the woman or not? For example, there's a bundle of cash here. It's not mine. I know, but it's mine. But I'm tempted to get it. Then I got it. How can it be the sin of the owner when the owner trusted me that I will not take the money?
Okay, I didn't say that the women are the ones who tempt, but in most cases, since men are very visual, you know, as you grow older, you will understand how men act and react, and how women also get to seduce men, even without them seducing the men, something like that. I really cannot explain all of these things in a very short period of time, but it's not really the women tempting the men, but a lot of times, since men are very visual, minsan it's not really the feelings. Unlike women, we have to fall in love with this guy before we are you know, we feel something for them, or whatnot. But and it's not me who's saying that the one who tempts has a greater sin. It's really the Quran. It's not me. So it's not only for us. I think even for, you know, I work for Senator Magsaysay, and one incident happened. One of the staff he was asked to bring this 50,000 pesos to somebody who needs help. And you know what happened? He lost the 50,000 pesos. And the senator chastised not the staff, but the one who asked him to bring the money. Because he said, you just gave him the opportunity to do something that is not moral. It's giving opportunity for others to become immoral. You see, on a deeper sense. So it's when we should lessen the opportunity that we create for others to do something that is not good. I think that's the teaching there. It's really lessening opportunities. It's becoming better influences, good influence rather than bad influence.
So I think we're actually a tad over time. Did we need to go back to CDO for a moment
Yes,
before we
I think
move
there's
to
a
workshop?
question right now.
Okay, let's give CDO one more chance to jump in, and then we'll move to the next phase, which is the workshop.
The question is here. Is this a question?
Oh, it's written.
We have initiated a livelihood program for non-working women here in CDO. However, we're having difficulty in sustaining it due to lack of water supply
Okay.
for
Teresa can answer that question.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question from CDO that's related to lack of water supply to be able to continue with the livelihood program. So to me, this is pointing to some problems with infrastructure that a lot of people are facing, not only in Mindanao, but in other parts of the Philippines as well. So I think that we'll be able to better answer that question offline. We certainly want to address it, but I think you okay. So I think what we're going to do now is move into the workshop portion. Again, this is where you get to wake up. If you're not already. So I'm going to ask you to divide, for those of you here with us in Manila, please divide into 4 groups. Okay, your groups are going to be fairly large, but divide into 4 groups. And please wait till I'm done with the instructions so you can hear me.
Okay,
Okay,
can count 1, 2, 3, 4.
count off 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me give the instructions first before we start counting. So once you're in your groups, okay, I want each group to think about the 3 topics that we addressed today. Remember, violence against women, trafficking, and women in conflict. Violence against women, trafficking, and women in conflict. Pick one. Pick one of these issues, and within your group, I want you to come up with 2 or 3 concrete solutions that your group can think of to address these issues. Okay, and the sky is the limit. Use your imagination. All right, I'm not giving you a particular budget. I'm not telling you you have to imagine you're a student or you have to imagine you're president of the Philippines. Okay, use your imagination how you think we should address these issues and come up with 2 or 3 solutions. Also think about who your spokesperson for the group is going to be, because you're going to report out to the larger group once you're finished. And you'll have approximately 20 to 30 minutes to discuss within your group, okay? And in CDO, we're going to have you do the same. I'm not sure how many you have there, but please divide into smaller groups and pick one of the issues to address, violence against women, trafficking, or women in conflict, and come up with 2 or 3 solutions, or ways to address these issues, okay?
Start here. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1, 4, 4, 1, 2, and 4. So we'll use number 3 and then 4. 1, X2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Hello, Master. 1, and 2. Okay. So what other ones?
Okay, so everybody's got a number, I think. So number 1 to sit here in this corner.
Hi.
There by the door. And number 4 is over there by the whiteboard.
Hi, we will start now our workshop. So please divide the group into 2. Yes, ma'am.
Come up with the resolution or proposed resolution out from those presentations.
Yes. And we have pens for you.
How much time do you give?
Okay, so we're gonna give up until 3:40. So it's about 20 minutes.
All right, we'll get back to you at 3:40.
Yeah, back to us at 3:40.
Okay.
And we'll call on you guys first if you're ready.
Okay. Okay, so everybody is telling us that we will get back to them at 3:40 right after your sharing, your group on the table, and close your fingers to present in the workshop. Again, the oral is the first one to present, followed by the other. So you will now share with your
So for each group, we have our speakers joining you.
your questions arise will be answered.
For the fourth group, it will be me and Susan.
If you want something to write in the book, maybe.
Just a quick time check. We have about 15 minutes. 15. You have to solve all the world's problems in the next 15 minutes, okay? Our hopes for you are very high.
Okay, well, the reason why I picked college was because I think it's more common. I mean, we tend to look at it as a practical skill, but I think what really matters is the practice itself. And I think that we're a very patriarchal society, even though we're all, there's like more awareness now about that. But I think that principles and our culture is still there. And then there's different kinds from different regions, you know, some here. So for me, that's the biggest challenge. That kind of culture that we have. Also, it's more challenging as mine. So I guess with really information change that just want like moving everything and women are women. So like that's what really strikes me about domestic violence. Pero binibigay mo, parang ikaw pa yung may kasalanan. Pero ikaw na yung nakakabog sa dahil lang yun sa marital groups or marital sexual parts na inborn, inherent sa iyo. So, ayun si Bujo. Kasi American children, pananaw na yun. Hanggang ngayon, may trials na nag-subscribe.
When you said that would change culture, it's basically
I don't know. I'm very curious about that. You also you chose travel.
no. It's like our
But when I think of policy, they're also very big demographics. Why not usually kasi parang speaking of communities that themselves or women, we're basically the community centered. Parang it's basically a platform for a lot of things. It's not just for parang addressing your business. For example, with the criminal violence against women, it's also a place where when it comes to their livelihood, for example, or and parang yun yung naisip ko na I'm not quite sure right now how do I figure out so that's why I want to explore it.
I think that's exactly that. I think that, online the education and livelihood and I think all of those are different, very essential facets or layers when it comes to women empowerment. And I think that the driving force for that community are the governance systems in the government. So I think that now the governance systems are very outdated or very, I don't know, just disjointed or undeveloped. So I think targeting that first and then making sure that our livelihood is there, that education is there, and that is being implemented in the agenda of the local government. Because the government provides budgets and support for all of this. So I think we can just really I think that's how I
Yeah, it's like yes. At the same time, a lot of usually parang required local government should definitely
Kasi kung ako babae, very hindi ako mag-isa ng oras ko. Gusto ko yung nila, parang basta parang mas okay para sa education kasi program. Parang hindi mo na kailangan puntaan. Parang yung sa iyo, yung process ng meeting, parang kasi kasi yung pakatala kayo yung culture mo, tapos represent yung bagay person kasi person guide. So, presentation, yung bagay person para sa ngayon, hindi na establishment. Tapos, wala direct ka na dun sa isang process. Walang paano.
sort of something like that. And I think what I have heard that we had about millennials na ayaw that's true because a lot of times there's cost. But then now I think people are more leaders are more like, and I think that there are a lot of innovative applications, technology, innovation, really to have that one stop access that even though they're not in the now so maybe that really is a good yeah, something like that one of social directed
Decision hard time check. You have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes. And 2 or 3 ideas, concrete ideas.
And especially when we set it in the context of people market. Internet there's but this is the good solution, especially for people. The target that we have, or the target that we have, sort of the chassis that we have. they actually target this
They can not necessarily be depicting themselves, but they or as they say, an act of God and then it's of someone
Okay. Hello po, Ma'am Esther. Ma'am Esther. Hello po. Ma'am Esther. Kayo po ang unang mamuna for this session, for the workshop, for the presentations. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. Spokesperson on behalf of your group,
Please ready to do now.
Ideas for how to address the issues. Okay. For those of you who don't know, we're going to turn to CDO first.
Can you speak again, Sir Randolph?
Let's hear from our colleagues in Cagayan de Oro about any of their pitches. Okay, turning it over to you, CDO.
I think this song.
So while we get that back online, over to you guys here in Manila. So, who wants to go first? Everyone looks scared. Okay. I think Mac is volunteering. That's group number 4. I think number 4, strong group number 4. Proposals to address
CDO. You will be the second. You will be the second presenter for this.
All right.
Okay. So you will be presenting first there.
Yes.
Sir Randolph. Okay. You will be presenting after that. Yes, after that.
Violence against it's a raise ignorance of women. We put ignorance of women because, for example, if for example, a good example is North Korea. In North Korea, they think that their leader, Kim something, I forgot his name, Kim Jong-il, is a god. They think he's a god. They think that they think that, for example, I'm from North Korea. What if I'm thinking something bad about him? He's gonna send me to jail. I think that he's a mind reader. He can do everything. They make fake books. You know the fake books that they make. You know those books? Was able to correct his teacher. At the age of 2, Kim Jong-il played tennis with some famous tennis player. So basically, if the woman is ignorant, the woman doesn't know anything. If I tell you that that chair is blue, you will think that that's blue if you didn't have access to education. If no one told you that that's not blue, that that's actually black, you wouldn't know. You'd think that that's actually blue. And in ignorance of society, I say that's another subcategory. Ignorance of society meaning if you don't also teach the society what will they be able to do to the women? They think that women will be inferior. If they believe that women are like this, women are like that, they believe that all their lives. That's why there is education. If we properly implement education, if we properly say that education is important, if everyone had access to education, then the society would gradually change. It wouldn't change basta-basta. It would change slowly. For example, in the 1700s, women in France, they were not allowed to show their ankles. And what now? Women can wear shorts up to here. And no one would bat an eyelid. So if they don't have, if we will educate both women in society, eventually, violence against women can eventually change. Because, for example, rights, and if you don't know your rights, and I'm already violating it, how can you complain? How can you say that no, my right, I have the right to not be injured. I have the right to not be hit by you because it's not my fault. It's against the law. How will you be able to say that against your attacker if you don't know? Right? So okay, so that ends it. Another category is lack of implementation of laws. And lack of implementation of laws. The laws are there. There's like a desk for women's health. I forgot, sorry. You can ask for help. If you're domestically abused and you're a woman, you can complain there. But what do you see when you go there? They're playing COC. They're not there. They're absent. How can you complain when they're not taking their job seriously? Or even if they're there, they're not taking you seriously because you're a woman. If we actually become more serious in implementation of laws, we can actually change gradually. And I think a good example is a lot of Filipinos, they just throw their trash everywhere in the water. Even though it's so stinky, they still live near there because they don't want to take accountability. So if they can't reverse it anymore, that's where they complain. That's when they complain and say that, oh, fix it. This is the government's fault. Just because they didn't teach us, blah, 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 blah. But if they actually listen, and if actually the government took them more seriously and didn't just let them, people would actually change.
I'm hearing two root causes: lack of education and lack of enforcement of the rule of law.
Another example is lack of pro-women campaigns. An example is in ABS-CBN, if there's an advertisement, let's say Tide or Surf, you know that it's Surfer, you know that it's Tide, you know that it's soap. But again, and in this society today, a lot of us watch TV. And in the province, a lot of people have TV because most of them don't have internet. So it's better if right before there was one advertisement, I remember that. But there was never an advertisement where women should have the same opportunities as men. In our culture right now, people think that women are inferior. Women should just be homemakers. They can't be politicians. For example, I always see this. If a woman is driving a car and she makes a slight mistake, another person who's driving a car opposite from her will say, oh, it's because she's a woman. Women shouldn't drive. Do you think that's actually good? Do you think that's actually good just because she's a woman she can't drive?
So what are the concrete solutions aside from making sure women have access to driver's licenses? Okay. So what are the steps Group 4 is going to take? Sorry. What are the concrete concrete steps that
Oh, we should
one
do
wants to take?
advertisements and TV. It's better if you put it on TV because people in the province especially, because that's where people are more, I'm sorry, ignorant, because they don't really have access to proper education. Then again, the average age that they study, that they drop out of school is grade 6. I know a lot of people who leave school at grade 6.
Okay, so public awareness campaigns on television specifically because the internet's not so good in Mindanao. Okay, public awareness, what else? That's number one.
Another example is mutual enforcement of rule of law and cultural transformation. Someone from group
Rule of law?
So now on the concrete solution, since we identified that one of the root causes is ignorance, along with lack of implementation of laws, what we're proposing now is not just to address ignorance or just lack of implementation, but to try and mutually reinforce both of them because that's the only way that we can actually guarantee that not only are these women given the freedom to wear what they want, to roam the streets whatever time of night, or to not be domestically abused, but also we must have these implementation guarantees that allow them to do these things and not be victimized. So that's the first. Having their freedoms, but also making society safer for those who are more likely to be victimized. And then the second, since we also discussed that one of the reasons why women are more likely to be abused is because they are economically or financially dependent upon their spouses or in their families, that they're considered to be supportive roles or playing supportive roles. So that may allow them now, that actually disable them from complaining because where would they go? They have no source of income and their children would not have one of our roommates suggested that perhaps more employment opportunities for women in all areas, not just in services, but also in more professional sectors, we actually be in order. Also because this also gives them a sense of empowerment, not just financial empowerment, but also a voice in their households, in society in general. Yeah, so let's break the glass ceiling.
Very good. Let's hear from group 4. Thank you, group 4. Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
we have
you
a
have
last
another
one.
one. You're overachievers. You get 3. Okay.
Okay, so our last one deals with how it now operates at the local level. Since we identified that there are violence against women desks in the local level, but why don't they work aside from implementation? Another problem is that women in civil society are under-empowered. We don't believe that, or at least they lack sources of empowerment from other organizations. So we believe that if women are more involved in civil society, if NGOs would reach out to more local context and make their solutions more context-based, then perhaps women can be more involved in the political process, and this may also be accomplished through formal representation in political processes. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, I actually heard 4 concrete solutions there. Okay, so education's a problem, so they suggested public awareness campaigns, in particular on television, because the internet is spotty in some parts of the country. I heard stronger enforcement of the rule of law, particularly as it pertains to the domestic violence law here in the Philippines, and that needs to be enforced more. I heard about more economic opportunities for women, including high-level, high-paying jobs, and then there was increased participation of women in the political process. So you guys accomplished a lot in 15, 20 minutes, so very, very good. Let's give them one more round of applause. Yay! All right, excellent. So I think maybe we could address some technical issues that we have to CEO and see what solutions they have.
That's right. Hello to CEO. Can you hear me? Hi, are you guys ready to do your pitches?
Adopted child siya. Nakita siya sa cathedral, dito sa Kaya bigas na daw.
na ay nakita sa chat kinsay gusto mag-adapt. So here comes sila, gustong bata, and prominent silang apelido. Politician sila sa Surigao. Crucial. Yes,
Let's move
ma'am.
on. While we just work that out, let's move on.
Do you hear us there?
Hello,
Can you hear us
hello.
there?
Okay.
Good afternoon, this is Josephine. Can you hear me?
But it's really tough to.
I have to think it. I will tell it again. Hello.
All right.
Can you hear us
Hello,
there?
hello. Thank you. Question?
Okay.
Resolution 2.
You can share your story now.
How can we go about abusing women as we are empowered to do things? My question is, how do we go about abusing women? Hello?
I think we'll go through for the pitch now, for the presentation, and then
Okay. We are talking about physical
yes,
violence.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Since we are experiencing today a child being abused by a mother,
Okay.
and we are submitting herself to the police officer, and the mother was then forced to go and be detailed on the prison cell today. It is very sad that the mother herself is enjoying the empowerment, the women empowerment, but it goes beyond the limitation of the empowerment. So our solution to the case that has been filed just today is the police officer, the procedure should be taken off by the accused mother.
Abusive mother has a child.
Abusive mother.
So the police officer again, can you repeat that?
The
The solution?
Abusive mother was the procedure when you filed law enforcement.
Can you
Abusive
repeat
mother,
the
child, law enforcement
solution?
process.
Just the solution.
Solution to the problem is we submit the case to the people in authority.
Okay.
So there are people in authority that have been assigned to solve the problem of my pupil that is being abused by the mother
Okay.
at home. This is physical abuse.
Okay, so we'll get back with you later on again after the other outputs of the other groups here in Manila.
Okay, so group 4 was the sacrificial lamb. We went first. All right, so we've got 1, 2, and 3 left. Who's going to be next? Who's our next spokesmodel? Okay, I'm going to pick somebody if you don't volunteer. Going once. Going twice. Aha, excellent. All right, group number 2. It looks like they address violence against women as well. So let's hear their solutions from group 2. Please take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, guys. First, I would like to discuss why we chose violence against women as our issue or focus. Well, it's not that we don't consider the other issues as not important, but we think that the violence against women issue encompasses all the other two. So yeah, we chose this one. So if you will look at our solutions, basically it operates within the educational system, and I think it's, and if you will also look at it, for education lang siya, it focus on the education. Well, anyway, going to point per point. So for the first thing, we would like, as a complete solution, we would like to include programs on gender equality in first for basic. Actually, this encompasses formal and informal aspects of education. So for the formal aspect, we would like to include
um, culture-based curriculum for basic education and tertiary. And also for the informal aspect, we would like to have gender sensitivity training in working place and gender equality seminars in communities. And for this culture-based curriculum, what we envisioned is that hindi isang curriculum lang yung mag-operate. I mean, per so that in order to address the problem when it comes to culture, kasi we do not want to impose a particular we do not want to impose a particular culture on another culture. So what we would want to do is that there will be representatives per, let's say, religion or per, and I think the main drafters here will be the local government, right? Ayun, so these local governments will invite experts and gender equality advocates to formulate the curriculum which will be implemented in their locality. And eventually, these curriculums which are formulated will be submitted to the national government for the national government to take action. And next, for the community, we acknowledge the importance of families, and we would want to have seminars in which families will be invited because we believe that in families it is from where we get our values. It is from where we learn what is right and what is wrong. And so we would like to invite more families in our community seminar. And for working places, we would want it to be a requirement for offices or for any firms to have gender sensitivity training in order to avoid perhaps sexual harassment and other forms of violence against women. And this inclusive culture-based education, I think, is already covered in the curriculum. And also, we would like to increase awareness by having information campaign through media. And by media, we would like to exhaust all means, not just in television, but through radios, internet, and perhaps newspapers. Well, in general, all forms of media, so that there will be a bigger reach of people who will have their awareness on gender equality. So, and also, I think an interesting point raised by one of my groupmates is that these kumbaga, we will present experiences. Parang our campaign would be experiential, right? So that parang the people will be more sympathetic and that they will actually understand or acknowledge that that violence against women is happening. It's not a myth, but it's actually a problem, and people actually experience it. So there.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. Group 2. Okay, so I think what we have here, a couple concrete solutions proposed by Group 2. We want to explore some gender equality training. This will help to address the lack of education or ignorance, as Group 4 put it, okay? So a little meeting of the minds here between Groups 4 and 2. Also, information campaign. So this is maybe a little more basic messages, something that people can see and hear repeatedly. So maybe it sticks in your mind. Maybe it's a little message about how domestic violence, family violence against women, against children is not acceptable. Okay, so short messages as well, also suggested by Group 4. All right, so thank you very much, Group 2. Let's give them one more round of applause. Okay, I think our last two groups are still discussing. Okay, so who's next? Okay, we've got Group 1 and we've got Group 3, the odd groups. That's no judgment, just an odd number. Okay, group number 3.
Hello. Before we start our presentation, we'd like everyone to take a deep breath and lessen your expectations. So for our presentation, we didn't really list down the roots or the causes because we put it in line with our solution. So first of all, the community. So we want to target the misconceptions, for example, how women are ignorant, how they're not aware that of their rights. They're not aware that what's being done to them is against the law and they can do something about it. So for the community, we want to tap the local government units to make an effort to really teach these women, for example, their rights and not just their rights in terms of policy, but also in terms of other rights and as Filipinos. And at the same time, in line with the livelihood solution, we'd like them to reach out to these women that have poor education, these women that are unemployed, and provide them with opportunities, for example, to take TESDA courses, to take different value adding courses that can help them get a proper job. So for education, we also want to tap the children, yung, not the teenagers. We want to teach them that what they see at home, for example, if they're exposed to their fathers beating up their mothers or such, we want to teach them that that's wrong. We want to teach them uh, that they can do something about it. So what we want to do is to integrate the VAUSI and violence against women, integrate it with the sex education program for high schools so that they can be properly educated, they can capacitate each other through word of mouth, possibly they can talk to their mothers, talk to their family when they see something wrong. So basically what we want to happen is that these children, they're going to correct the wrong that they see, that we want to correct their notion that this is okay, it's okay to do this, to 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 express violence in certain opportunity, for certain reasons. So yeah.
Very good. If I can wrap up and point out the commonalities among the groups, even if you use different words. Okay, so the community solution I heard from group 3, they're putting some responsibility on the local government unit for educating adults, for making sure that adults are aware that violence against women and children is against the law so that everyone understands their rights under the law. Okay, they also talked about education, focusing more on early childhood education on the little ones so that they understand if what they're seeing at home is actually violent, that is wrong. Also targeting teenagers, maybe integrating some of this education with sex education classes. And commonality with group number 4, some more economic opportunities for women, this time maybe focusing on women who are a little less educated, maybe have not worked before, so we usually say livelihood type programs. So everybody basically is talking about education so far. Everybody's talking about education, everybody's talking about public awareness campaigns. All right, so I think I'm definitely seeing a common thread here. So very good, one more round of applause for group number 3. Thank you, thank you. Okay, now, group number 1. Okay, saving the best for last, I don't know, let's see, no pressure.
Hello, everyone. So, like every other group here, we chose violence against women. But looking back, actually, our solutions are not just about violence against women, rather women's issues in general. So, the things that we've discussed earlier very interconnected with each other: conflict, violence against women, human trafficking. So, in general, these are solutions that we can help women generally, but more specifically, violence against women. So we adopted a three-pronged approach because these three target different audiences. For example, education targets teenagers or regular students. Community centers usually targets adult women who cannot usually access internet or cannot access television, especially in provinces. And the third one is social media, very youthful platform. But at the same time, it can also reach people who are not necessarily involved in violence against women, but want to get involved or want to help out or want to know what to do when they see violence against women. So let's start with the first one, education. Basically, the idea here, just like the other groups, is to introduce, basically to reintroduce gender or or integrate violence against women, issues of women in education, because the teenage years are usually the formative stage for when we talk about sex and when we talk about gender. So I think that's very important. However, the issue about who will teach it is the immediate implication. So what we wanted to do was for uh, education on gender to be a community affair as well, because people in the community usually know what know the context of gender, or for example violence against women. These issues should be contextualized. The second one are community centers. Now this is a rather tricky thing. This is what I had in mind before was like a women community centers. Basically a place where women can get together and just talk about these issues. It doesn't really have to be just about violence against women. What we had in mind here was a multi-purpose thing. So it's a livelihood center. Same time, it could also be a women resource center. It could also be a center for education, a center for discussion groups like this. Also, support groups. It could also be a physical platform for women to talk to each other, experiencing the same problems. In this case, violence against women. So what we had in mind with centers was something that is established or sustained with the local government, but at the same time also in collaboration with community, of course, definitely, and NGOs, because they usually know what are the issues of women, what do we need in establishing community centers, what kinds of resources do women or do people who need these community centers need. And the third one is social media. Social media is very, how do I say it? It reaches a lot of people. So we want to tap into that. We want to tap into people who are not necessarily victims of violence against women, but who wants to know what to do when they see one. So social media campaigns could include what could be considered as violence against women, what to do when you see one, and basically information on how to help. So it's connecting these three different groups that we really wanted to achieve in this kind of plan. So you have teenagers will basically be the next generation of, of women and men. Community centers who target adult women and adults in general, and social media who targets those people who are outside these communities but who want to help it. That would be all.
Thank you. Group one. Okay, so education popped up in every single group's report. So it sounds like that's pretty important, and you guys certainly know much better than I do whether or not that type of education is needed here. And what I'm hearing is that it very much is needed here, not just for young people, but for adults as well. Maybe a way to reach some of those adults is through public awareness campaigns, social media, television, radio, newspapers, the whole gamut. So that sounds like something that every group agreed to. I like the idea here as well for community centers, women's centers, maybe where survivors of violence against women can come together and help to empower each other. And because these would be community-based, you would be surrounded by people who maybe you share some commonalities with, you're from the same place, maybe you have similar backgrounds, so it's maybe a little bit easier to share with your peers in that context. So I like that idea as well. So one thing that we often talk about in the context of trafficking are the 3 Ps. But it occurs to me that it applies to violence against women and children as well, okay? And it's a useful framework, I think, as you guys leave here and really continue to think about these things. So the 3 Ps are prevention, so that's where your education piece comes in. Protection, that's where adequate enforcement of the rule of law comes in. And prosecution, also where adequate rule of law implementation comes in. Okay, one thing that no one said that I think is maybe something to take away to think about is that if you have a woman in crisis who has nowhere to go, maybe she doesn't live near her family, maybe she's not familiar with her surroundings, there are not very many domestic violence shelters in the Philippines right now. Okay, so there's not very many places where that lady can go. Okay, so that's something else that I would throw into the mix as maybe another way to try to address it. It won't end it, okay? Nothing necessarily will end it except generational change and lots of education. But it's some way that we can immediately try to address the 17.5 million women estimated in the Philippines who are experiencing this, okay? So I apologize to CDO that we had some technical difficulties there, but I could tell that they were facilitating their own conversation on their end. So I hope that they came up with excellent solutions as well. Did you want to give it one more try before we move to the next phase?
So I think they're also towards the end of their.
They're wrapping it up as well. Okay, we don't want to take too much time out of everybody's schedule. So I'm just going to leave you with a couple closing remarks. I want to thank all of you for coming here. We took a good chunk of your afternoon and we understand that. So thank you very much for coming and for actively participating and sharing your ideas. I hope that you enjoyed your time here and that you drew inspiration and feel more empowered than when you walked in the door. And I want to make sure for all the guys in the guys in the audience that you're empowered as well, because this isn't just empowerment for women, it's empowerment for everybody. Okay? What comes next after this is up to you guys. Okay? So my colleagues here are going to be creating a special Facebook group so all of you can keep in touch and maybe you can continue to work with some of the new colleagues and the new friends that you've made today. We're going to be sending out the PowerPoints that you saw here, and we're also going to be sending you a survey. So please tell us, give us your harshest opinion. Let us know how you think today went. And if you have suggestions to make it better for the next time, please tell us, because we do make changes based on your feedback. Okay? So with that, I think I will turn it over to the last part, which is the awarding of certificates. Okay?
Thank you so much. Let's give our panel speakers another round of applause. Of course, we would also like to thank our friends from American Corner Cagayan de Oro for being here with us. I think they're continuously discussing their outputs as well. Hi there. So I think they discussed we will continuously get in touch with them. And so from here, from Manila, we will have to say goodbye to our friends from American Cagayan de Oro. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Later.